This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. I call to order the meeting of the Town Commission on September 29th, 2022 at 6:03 p.m. Thank you to those that are listening to our live audio feed. Just a reminder that those that wish to make public comment during the meeting are encouraged to attend in person in our chambers or send their comments to the town clerk prior to the meeting. Town Clerk Avery, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Field,
Here.
Vice Mayor DeHassett,
Present.
Mayor Hurlbert,
Here.
Commissioner Haas,
Here.
Commissioner Feischl.
Absent without notice.
Yeah, without notice. I'm guessing he's on his way.
Late.
Or we can text him. Okay, everybody rise and join me for the pledge, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, then. Are there any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Anything we know of? And I will entertain a motion on the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, I will now open the floor for public comment on any item not listed on the agenda. All right, then. Public comment is now closed. All right, regular agenda items. Agenda item number 1. Approve unbudgeted expenditure of $2,450 for soil boring testing for the storage building, police warehouse storage building. Interim Manager Ladner, would you please explain?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In May of 2022, the Commission approved the purchase and construction of a storage facility for use of city vehicles and equipment. The final remaining item that needs to be completed for the building permit to be issued for this project to move forward is a soil boring test to ensure that the foundation will be solid. The chief has gone through getting quotes, and the one that we have that is the best option is in front of you this evening. It's $2,450. Getting this done obviously won't take place before the new fiscal year starts on Saturday, so it will be in FY23, but it will allow us to move forward and get this building constructed that you have already approved. Obviously, it's very well needed. Certainly could have been used this week to make sure that equipment and vehicles were stowed away in case things had been worse than they were.
All right, I will now open the floor for public comment. Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Chief, is there anything you want to add to this?
Just that this is obviously a requirement for us to know how much concrete foundation we need, whether it's a basic pour, or whether we're going to have to put larger footers in, whether we're going to have to beam up, or what we're going to have to do to make sure the foundation is proper. And I wouldn't suggest that we move forward without doing it, obviously, because potentially it could be a whole waste of money if we don't do this first.
Plus the weight of what was said.
All right, perfect. All right, I'll open the floor for commissioner discussion. Jeffrey, do you have anything to say?
No, let's make a motion that we proceed with the.
You good with this, Christine?
I'm good.
You good with this? I'm good. Martin's gone. So I can make a motion, Jeff?
I just did.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All righty then. Now, on to town manager candidate selection. All right, we have our senior advisor, Mr. Klayman. Would you like to give us an opening statement on where we stand here, please?
Madam Mayor, members of the Town Commission, my name is Dan Klayman. I've done something wrong already. There we go. My name is Dan Klayman. I'm a senior advisor from the Florida City and County Management Association. And as you know, have been assisting you in recruiting and your process for selecting a new town manager. We are roughly halfway through the or so of the process. The task before you tonight is to identify which candidates you wish to personally interview for the position of town manager. I have sent an email to the commission suggesting to you the names of 5 candidates that I would recommend that you consider. There is nothing magic in selecting 5. If you want to select 6, that works. It's limited only by the amount of time that you want to commit to the process. Candidates that I recommended to you were Michelle Berger, Howard Brown, Steve Crowell, and Lynn Ladner. In addition to that, I recommended another candidate who has since withdrawn, so he is obviously no longer under consideration. In the email that I sent to you, I also identified what I would suggest might be the next 2 candidates you consider if your choices are different than the ones that I suggested to you. Those are Ryan Fabry and Stanley Hawthorne. In addition to that information, I should have caught this and frankly did not. There are actually 2 candidates who have claimed veterans preference that in conversation with the town attorney's office, town attorney has indicated that those candidates should be interviewed and be part of the short list of candidates under consideration. Those 2 candidates are Larry Tibbs and Mr. Bossert.
Who's recommending them?
The second one is Bossert.
No, I know.
BOSSERT.
Because they're veterans.
Okay,
It's a Florida requirement.
Right.
Yes.
So if you take Tibbs and Bossert as a given for interview, that's your first 2. And at that point, you should select another 3 or 4, or even more if you choose to. In the schedule that we have outlined, I recommended and you had approved a date that's now been changed, but is now October 12th for the date for interviews. In the outline for the process, we suggested 50-minute interviews scheduled at 9, 10, 11, 1:30, and 2:30. So essentially an hour apiece with a lunch break, or hour apart, 50-minute interview, 10-minute break between the interviews. So if you wanted to interview 6 candidates instead of 5, we would add 3:30 to that time list. Or more, I would suggest you add either 4:30 or decide to start earlier, whichever you prefer. So I'd be happy to respond to any questions that members of council might have. I would tell you that in the recommendations that I have made about a short list, I have placed a high value on candidates who hold a master's degree in public administration, all of them do, and who have had specific experience as a manager, and all of them do. But you may find someone else more appealing to you. In the final analysis, it's your choice that's way more important than my opinion. I'd be happy to answer questions. I'd be just as happy to sit in.
You're not getting off that easy. Okay, first we do public comment before we discuss. right?
Sure.
Okay, so before we discuss everybody, let's have public comment. So Ann.
Zoanne Hennigan, 91 Island Drive South. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Clayman for all his time and effort in helping Ocean Ridge in this critical process. Given the importance of this process, I wanted to contribute my background where I could. Many of you are aware that I have an HR background, having retired from Intel Corporation. But I was also the director of worldwide staffing at Intel. So this is an area of expertise and interest to me. Town manager selection is like a three-legged stool. Resumes are leg one of this stool, and hopefully you've all gone through those resumes. The second leg is the background information, starting with any research that can be done on performance or things that have been published on the internet, identifying any positives or negatives about a candidate. Being a town or city manager is rarely without issue, but you need to be aware of what some of those issues might have been. Any questions of honesty or integrity are clearly red flags. Customer relations is definitely critical, and often issues rise out of what candidates might say they left due to political issues with the commissions or councils, and that may not necessarily be a red flag, as we know how things go. But the third leg of this stool is the interpersonal connection, and that you'll get from the interviews. So all three legs need to be taken into consideration. So I hope that you've all reviewed the resumes and the articles. And in some cases, these articles do paint a far more informative pictures than the resumes. Because resumes can be very glowing, and you really don't know for sure that everything on the resume is accurate. So one of the things before you make an offer or really consider a candidate is the experience, credentials, and education really should be verified in addition to the legal background check. So as you talk about each candidate, I'd be happy to provide any input only if you think if something might have been missed, either pro or con. But in addition to deciding what candidates you want to interview, I hope this meeting will also address a couple of other things. How to handle the expenses for the interviews of non-local residents, the process for voting and completing these verification checks, having a contract up front with the salary and relocation considerations for the candidates before you interview them. That's something I was actually, having come from the corporate world, it is not something I was familiar with, but having read some of these articles, some of the municipalities will say, before you bring somebody in for an interview, they want to see the contract in advance, even if it's a range of salary, a range of relocation. And the last item is contingencies if your number one candidate doesn't accept an offer. So that's it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for all your input. Do we have anything else from the public? Ken?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Ken Khalil, 86 Island Drive South. Very good comments. I agree with them 100%. But additionally, I'd like to hear, what you saw of 15 applicants, at least on the website. And maybe there are more that we didn't know about. But I'd like to hear from your consultant, the process. I know he's explained this to you, but leading up to today, present company accepted. Please don't take this the wrong way, but in looking at those candidates, there are some things that are staring at me. And that is local, there's nobody from a local South Florida area. Nobody from, it just seems odd in terms of recruiting, in terms of what happened. Did we go out and talk to other municipality managers, and what was that process? I know some of it is probably private, but I know that stuff goes on. I mean, I've done this a few times over, unfortunately. But I think it's important to understand that, and I would not stop at this level. If you're not happy with the candidates after that, then I think I would not be afraid to go back out to the marketplace, because I know the marketplace is changing rapidly. I know there are town managers out there looking. So, I mean, I would suggest that you maybe, take a global look at this and make sure you find the right person. One thing I do wholeheartedly agree with Zoanne, and that is when she mentioned the interpersonal skill and the interpersonal relationship that the candidates have. But I caution you, it's not only with yourselves, it's with the community. It's that interpersonal relationship that you should be concentrating on, not necessarily with yourself, and that's a challenge in and of itself. Oftentimes, there are people from the community that are involved in this process, and I would encourage you to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khalil. Do we have any other comments? All right, I'll close the floor to public comment. Mr. Clayman, would you do us a favor, please? And maybe we could address, I don't think Ken's been at any of the meetings when we discussed how we were going to advertise and who has answered our advertisements, how many, et cetera, et cetera.
Again, Dan Clayman, FCCMA Senior Advisor. On the recruitment process, what we identified in the document that you approved, what is now a couple of months ago, I guess, we identified that we would advertise in 2 professional organizations, the organizations that are most likely to have manager candidates who are in the market be checking to see if there's a job availability. Those are publications of the Florida City and County Management Association and its national counterpart, the International City and County Management Association. We advertised in both of their publications and on their website and in the way they normally handle job openings. We also notified the Florida League of Cities about the opening, and we, I believe, took out ads in 2 newspapers, in the Palm Beach Post and in the Coastal Star, a more local newspaper, to attract any local candidates. One can never tell who might be in the market and who might apply. I would tell you, I was slightly surprised that there were only 15 applicants. I would have expected more than that, but I don't know that there's any other outreach that we would have taken that would have generated any more, because if you're a manager, if you're in Florida, if you're somewhere else in the country and in the market, you would look to the FCCMA and the ICMA for job opportunities that are available. So that's the process that we followed, and it's where we are. I would agree if, as one of the speakers said, if you believe you don't have an adequate pool of applicants and wish to re-advertise, you can. You certainly can extend the period of time that the application process is open. However, I would submit to you that of the candidates that you have, that have expressed an interest, you have a number of candidates who can, I believe, very ably handle the responsibilities of being the Ocean Ridge Town Manager. So while you might get more, I don't know that you'll get better.
Okay, that makes sense. So what would be the best way? Oh, should we have the record show that Commissioner Bishlak has joined us?
I would like to have a discussion about the procedure this evening before we start the
That's
procedure.
exactly
Agreed.
right. That was just coming out of my mouth. Okay, so maybe you can even lead us, then you could help us here, is we need a good procedure so that we can look at the candidates that I'd be interested in hearing the ones that you and why, but I'd also like to hear the ones you didn't, possibly why not. And then everybody else has read through all these and probably has their own input on there as well. So what's the best way to start?
But
What do you think?
my procedure has nothing to do with that.
What are you talking about?
Well, there's three items. Number one, Lynn Ladner is with us.
Right.
I don't see any reason to have a discussion about Lynn Ladner. We're going to be interviewing her for the next 3 months. So I think she gets a pass. Because no matter what we do, she's going to be there at the end of the process, and perhaps we will choose her. So we just don't do any discussions of Lynn Ladner. Plus, it's
We get it.
uncomfortable.
No, we get it.
October 12th, the reception from 4 to 5 p.m. Totally disagree with that. Let's say we do have 4 or 5 candidates, right? So we invite them to the party, and then after the party, we sit down and say, we should not have invited you 4. I think that's very rude. I don't think we should do the reception. And number 3, I don't know quite how this can help us, but I did a chart with all the commissioners across the top and all the candidates down the side. My thought process was this would allow us to quickly delete or not choose the candidates that I would think all 5 of us have no interest in. So we don't discuss them. We get rid of them at the beginning, get to the ones we consider more serious.
Steve, could you turn your microphone on?
You couldn't hear me?
Well,
It would
Yeah.
help him. It would help him if you did.
Could you guys hear me?
Now they can, right? Everybody got it?
no, I can hear you.
Sorry about that. I can repeat it all.
No, I got it. So basically, I guess what you're saying is each one of us says, hey, these are my 2
What are
or
your
3.
mine?
These are my 2 or 3, or these
Or
are
the other way around.
or these are ones I don't want.
Right.
Okay, either
He
way.
wanted
it's
to
all
start
right.
with
And
the
I can
let's,
hand this
Yeah.
paper to Kelly and she can go right through them and then we can just say no and she can check off each commission.
all right, well, well, we basically would do that when we got to them, but if we start with them off the list to begin with, then we can winnow that down. So that's fine. Let me ask about the problem you have with the reception. All right, so we have our interviews. We have not made our decision. We are digesting our decision. We have the reception for the citizens to meet the people that are still out there and possibly going to be chosen. And after the reception is when we select. So we're not going to, you might know by that time exactly who you want.
Yeah, but there's 4 or 5 people, it's 4 or 5 people we invite to a party. Then
So-
at the end of the party, we fire them.
No, no, we pick one of them.
It's ridiculous.
We're
Well, my
picking-
question is, what is the purpose of the reception? Just to have the public meet the people that may be town manager?
Yes.
Okay, well, it was, so the people elected us to make the decisions to hire the town manager. Why would I then have people that we may not hire have public meet them? I think that's completely, it should not happen. If we're gonna make the decision on who's gonna hire, we're making the best decision for the town. I think that's why we get elected to be here, to make the best decision for the town as a group. Now, once we have that person, then we should have
Well,
the
that's
reception for that person, because that's now the new town manager. But to have a reception for 5 people that may be town manager, I completely concur. That's, all right, well, hey, so everybody meets, so if I'm one of the audience members, I don't have a say in who's gonna become the town manager. So what's the point?
I think the audience member actually does not
If
have
I
a
may?
say, but yeah, please.
The idea of the reception or a public meeting is to provide an opportunity for citizens to be able to learn enough about a candidate to comment to you. It's not for them to have a party. It's for a citizen to say, during this 1-hour period, I talked to this candidate and I talked to this candidate, and I want you, Madam Mayor, to know that I very much like what I heard from candidate A. That's simply a citizen communicating with his elected representative. The mayor can completely ignore that citizen's comments if she wishes, as can all of the members of the commission. But it's really just an opportunity for citizens to be able to spend a little bit of time. And there are relatively few citizens who are interested enough to do this. But there are
Might
some.
surprise
You
you.
might be right.
Yeah.
Can
Might
I-
surprise you.
And if you want to hear from them,
Right.
then I would suggest you hear from them after they've had an opportunity to know a little bit more about the candidate. Obviously, a citizen can sit in the audience, listen to the same interview that takes place by the town commission all day long and make a judgment. But it's just an opportunity to provide a little bit more opportunity for input. You don't have to do it. The process won't be any the worse if you don't do it. I would argue it might be a little bit better, and it might give the town commission a little more credibility with the public that you listen to the public during this process. Because it's somewhere down the road, you're gonna hire somebody who's going to do something that won't be good. And you're gonna have
Or
to
perceived.
defend and explain why you hired this rascal.
But the concept, which is what I understood, we discussed this before, about when you first gave us the suggestions of how this ought to go. And I believe we all were saying, what is that for? Point being, the public who shows up and is interested has an opportunity to do their own little due diligence, speak, talk, and at public comment can make their word. We are supposed to be listening to them as well. We don't necessarily have to make our decision based on that, but it's not going to hurt.
Madam Mayor, may I piggyback on this?
Would you please?
Yeah. Whether we invite the public to interact with them prior to our decision making or not is kind of superfluous to me. But if we are, I'd like to have some kind of formal comment cards that they can fill out. I mean, because it would be almost impossible for them to come then to each one of us and tell us how they feel.
I would assume at the start of your process, when you are selecting,
The public
The
comment.
public comment.
you would
Exactly.
solicit
Correct.
public comment.
Yeah, that's what I said.
So
So we don't need this.
let me finish my thing.
After.
I feel like trying to get everything done in one day is unnecessarily and unduly rushing stuff. You're gonna ask somebody to stand in front of me for 15 minutes. I've done my due diligence, I've read the articles, this and that, kind of get a feel. Maybe I have, a cup of coffee with them during an interview process. And then you're asking us to make the biggest decision outside of the budget that we make as a commission. And I just feel like it's rushed, and I don't understand why the necessity to rush it. I mean, I feel like there's a little bit of Chicken Little running around with the sky falling, and it's really not that. I mean, finding the right fit to me is much more important, and I agree with, with Mr. Khalil. If we don't have the right candidates, maybe we get through it all and we negotiate with one and the negotiations go south and we don't have a number two. I mean, I'm totally against trying to squeeze 5 out of this because I don't think we have 5 worthy people to begin with. So I'll just state that from the very beginning. But I'm just, so there's a couple of things with the process, whether it's, and we're relying upon your recommendation. So please don't think you're on the hot seat. I just think that we need to have an open, honest discussion about it. Are we going to pay reload? If so, how much? Are we, there was one candidate that wants $160,000. I don't think we're ever going to pay that. So, I mean, I think we need to set some parameters too before we even jump into discussing the candidates that we do like. I agree with you. Let's get the ones that we don't like off the table.
So why don't we take the 3 points I made one at a time? Do we all agree Lynn gets a pass till the end?
Yes.
Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, the reception, we're back to where we
Good
were. One thing I would say about the reception, a townsfolk will be out there for maybe 5 to 10 minutes speaking to a potential candidate who perhaps is a great salesman, great speaker. Meanwhile, we've spent, 3 to 10 hours per candidate studying these people?
Hopefully.
And that's 10-minute salesman interaction, then it sort of devalues our due diligence. I guess that's what I'm looking for.
I disagree in devaluing our input, but there are a lot of very strong-willed people in this
That's right.
town. And the minute you tell them that we've worked so hard towards transparency and involving them in decision-making and having all these wonderful things, and they want to know this and they want to know that, and we acquiesce, and then all of a sudden, with one of our biggest decisions, we have 5 public meetings for budget, which is a huge decision. So to have one public meeting and then not allow them even to have, outside of public comment, a input, I'm okay with it. I can tell you probably at least 5 people that are gonna be not happy with it, and those are the vocal minority.
Well, I'll just say it was your idea.
Oh, good, well, you do all the time, so I'm not concerned.
I do, wait a minute, you were gonna say something. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Mark,
can I
please.
interject on that?
Yes.
So I see the point of not, I see both of the points. I see both sides of the story. The only thing is, to your comment, this might be a great salesman, that might actually be an asset. And in our interview process, we're gonna go very methodically through education, through background, through all of these things that are very, cut and dry. And the candidate is answering these questions cut and dry based on what we are asking. And then that candidate goes outside and has a cup of coffee with Terry Brown and is a completely different person in that moment because he's relaxed, he has the coffee in his hand, and there's a personal interaction going on. That personal interaction is actually what needs to happen out front there when that person is sitting in the town manager position. So yes, I would like, for us, it is important to know the facts about that person. But at the same time, somebody can have the greatest resume, goes out there and is a complete, I don't know if we can say
Yes,
this.
you can.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christy.
It's a legal term.
Thank
And
you.
that might come out in that personal interaction with the town folk. And then Terry comes to you and goes like, listen, that guy, absolutely not. But on paper and in the interview process, he looks good. Or the exact opposite, it might be somebody that you have some sort of reservations about, but then he's fantastic with all of those people. So I kind of understand where you're coming from. I see the point. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea.
I think it's a good idea, only for the
Even
fact
if
of,
we
like
fire
you
them.
said, we do have a group of public residents that want to be involved. And to give them the opportunity, even though we are making the decisions, but we're making the decisions based on what they would like to have as well. We should be taking in a little bit of what they have to say. I think it's a good thing. To your point, I get it. That's all. I was saying, I said to you at one point that that's a whole lot for us to take in and make a really big decision with, what would that give us, 2 hours to marinate and then come up back here and make the decision? But I don't see any other way we could do that. You're going to have some.
Could I comment
Please.
about that? It has been my experience when a city council postpones to a later date the actual selection,
Right?
spend all day interviewing candidates and then say, tomorrow or the next week, we're
Mhm.
going to get together and decide. What tends to happen is memories fade, and you hear council members say, now, was that the candidate who was from Wisconsin? I don't remember that exactly. And the closer you do it to the process, the more likely you are, while it's fresh in your mind, to be able to make those judgments of comparing one against the other. I don't claim you can't do it at a later date, you can.
Of course.
I would just tell you this, in my experience, there's a little bit of downside.
Well, that was the reason of having that schedule, that the way you suggested it to us.
Yes.
So, and I do,
If we can't retain something for 24 hours, we're all in.
Well,
Yeah.
well, actually, I am,
But-
so I get that. I get
If
that.
the candidate can't express to us his interpersonal abilities during the interview, that's the candidate's problem. It shouldn't now go to third parties to inform us if they have a personality. I think it's a waste of time. It doesn't move us forward. It takes up 2 hours in a day that we're compressing interviews into.
No, the 2 hours could also be that marinating time I was looking for. I think it's a good idea to involve the public. So let's get a consensus here. I mean, we're stuck, that whole day we are going to be spending on this subject. 2 hours there, I don't think is going to kill us. And if it's of any help at all, I think it's worth doing and letting the public feel that they have it.
All right, let me give you a
Situation.
hypothetical. We get to we do the interviews and we talk all the interviews and we really don't even find any one of them. So we've already advertised, we're gonna introduce everybody. And we end up at the end of the interviews, we say, we're not really interested in anybody. So do we go out and just shake hands with everybody and say, oh, we didn't decide? I'm saying you're putting this cart before the horse with this reception. When you're doing these interviews and you're gonna do a reception afterwards, what about during the interviews, you decide you don't want any of the folks that you
So what
interviewed?
about if we do them up front? If we do the
All
reception up
the
front?
people that you've interviewed are grown-ups.
Right.
They've applied for jobs before.
Yeah.
They've been turned down for jobs. Speaking
That
from my own
is
experience.
that is not my point. My point is that we are doing interviews. You're expecting us now, after we get done all the interviews now, to have a reception afterwards for the people that we interviewed. What if during the interview, we end up not wanting any of the folks that we interviewed, whether they're grown-ups or not? Then what happens? My point is we're getting too far forward. Like, let me finish, please.
I'm sorry.
To your point, you're putting way too much on our plate to not only now interview each one of these people, but then to decide on which ones are going to be out in the reception area. Why not? I think that we're all capable of remembering from the next day to the next and do the interviews. Once we have the interviews, we select the people, then advertise if you want to do a reception a day or two later. And then you can do, if you really want this reception, then make a decision after that, a couple days later. It doesn't have to be jammed into a same day deal. I think sometimes also after you do interviews, especially you like writing every single thing down. And you like to ruminate on the fact of what did this person say? What did this person say? How did this person react to that question? You're going to make that decision right then and there after all those interviews, right? Okay, well, I like that one the
You have
best.
2 hours at the reception to be ruminating there.
Yeah.
I think it's doable. I
Well,
think it's
you have-
doable
I think
and
it's a
I,
poor idea.
You have certain
I think
people
it's-
here that are
I
from
know
out
you
of
do.
town, you know. I'm
So-
looking at some of the
Yeah,
ones
we've got
that
a
I
couple coming
have
from out of town.
on my list here. You got Missouri, South Carolina, Connecticut. There's some in Florida, but
Well,
everybody would have to
there is a
travel.
phone. In other words, if we decide to hire them, we call them on the phone.
No, I understand, but for the reception, I mean, right now we're talking about the reception.
So
What
since
if we
we're
do the
sitting here, we're
reception?
loggerheads, why don't we go to, do we have a consensus to cancel the reception
that's where
or
I
do
was
we
going.
not?
So,
I'm a no.
but what I maybe heard from Commissioner Pugh is that it's not the thought of the reception, it's the timing of it, and should we start with the reception and then do the interviews afterwards? That way we've got, we've given the public, what they feel is their say. We can take their comment cards, we can read through them, and then we go on and do what we gotta do, and that way you've had the input.
You've done your
You've done your due
input from your
diligence.
people, if that's
So
what you
you're
want to
talking
do.
about inviting and I know that Lynn has something to say. You're talking about inviting the public for like coffee in the morning before we do the interviews?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
What
what
do
I'm
you,
hearing.
what do you think about?
Yeah, I don't like the reception at all.
All right,
Right.
yeah,
But
right,
if
exactly.
if
He's
you're
not
gonna
saying
have
that at
If
all.
you're gonna have a consensus, we're on.
Daniel, what do you think about that concept?
I
You're
don't
advisor,
like
so I'm
the idea
asking
of
for
coffee in
advice.
the morning. It makes travel arrangements more difficult. You got a candidate who's traveling across the state for an afternoon
Right.
interview.
Right, you're filtering them by
And then
that
you're gonna
time.
tell him he's gotta come the night before so he can be here for breakfast
Right,
or
okay,
for coffee.
I get
I
that.
wouldn't do that.
Okay, Lynn, did you have something you wanted to add?
You'd be better
I
off,
get
in
that.
my judgment, not to have a reception.
So if I'm
agree.
the first candidate and I gotta wait for the whole rest of the candidates to go through,
To get a
I'm gonna be
reception.
tired. So when I go to meet the reception, I'm tired, so I'm not on my A game and I'm not
The
as
later
entertaining
candidates
to
aren't
the
going,
people.
the later candidates
So
won't
then-
come at
But
the
you're an
early part of the
adult.
morning. Lynn, would you like to
So
say
now we're
something?
talking about adults.
Ms. Ladner?
I was going to suggest the coffee with the candidates, but what I would do, similar to avoid what Dan was suggesting, is for candidates, in state, that would be traveling that day, schedule them in the morning so that they wouldn't have to deal with that afternoon interview morning
But
breakfast.
then they wouldn't go to the reception.
Well, but the reception is coffee in the morning, and anybody traveling from out of state.
Anyway,
wouldn't
we're never
come in
gonna
on
come
Okay, so yeah,
resolution.
we're not, so let's,
It's a bad
Okay.
idea in my mind.
Okay, so
Let's
hold
discuss
on.
this.
If I were a city manager trying to figure out the consensus of the commission that I worked for about what they want to do, I have a sense you'd be more comfortable not having a reception.
Thank
have it
you.
in the- Okay, let's get a consensus. I like the idea of the reception. I like the idea of asking our public to take part and feel they have a chance in a position in here. So let's just see. I know, Jeff, I know the answer, but go ahead.
Absolutely not.
Okay, Christine?
I'd be comfortable either way. I do hear your concerns though of having somebody who we just stood in front of for 15 minutes and we were just like shaking our heads and then we have to, go and, have a pop with them. It's like, why bother?
But do you think any of these five are shaking head people?
We don't know.
You don't know.
I said, do you
You don't
think?
know.
Did you read some of the clips on some of them?
Yes, but that's, excuse me, that's the media. I'm thinking something
No,
different
they
there.
were fired.
So, Martin?
Plenty of people have been.
Yeah, really.
I'm gonna make this easy. I'm gonna be a no.
I'm gonna agree with Dan 100%, no reception.
I don't think I was agreeing with him,
No,
but he
Dan
said
was
that.
clarifying something.
Yeah, okay,
You
so,
brought it up.
no,
Own it.
No.
no, okay, so
That's just
consensus is,
catch
sorry, reception out. We'll
You're not
survive.
hurting my feelings.
I know.
A bit.
We'll
Okay.
still have coffee.
I do have a request for a clarification.
All right.
Commissioner Cos says we're going to give Lynn a pass.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
That means she reaches the final round, the 1 of 5, 1 of 6, whatever you want.
We will not
Okay.
publicly discuss her this evening.
So.
Right,
you've
this
now-
evening, right.
You've now selected
One.
3 candidates.
No. we've
Well, he's
selected
including the
one.
veterans, the
2
veterans.
with veterans preference and Ms. Ladner.
Okay, we
That
haven't
changed
selected
everything.
them, we
Also,
were given them.
In my psychological mind, it allows Lynn to be here as we question the other candidates, or is my mind wrong on that?
No,
I would recommend, if Lynn is one of the candidates being interviewed, I would recommend she not be present.
Not be at the interview.
It's really a
Agreed, my
question
error.
of courtesy
My error.
to the other
My error.
candidates.
My error.
Okay,
I would
Yes.
suggest that.
Just to,
Christie, please.
for sunshine law purposes, we are not gonna ask anyone not to be present for a public meeting. If they want to voluntarily agree among themselves not to be present for someone else's interview, that's up to them.
Okay, then.
I agree with the
The other
attorney.
candidates?
All I would do
Sunshine
is
law, yeah.
suggest to a candidate that they not
Right.
be in the room during the interview.
As we did with the interims, the same
Just
thing.
all candidates.
And the
Just
chief
gotta-
will be there with them.
Because I would not want you to break the law.
can we talk about,
Okay,
are
next.
we willing to pay for people to actually,
Well, don't we
Travel
want to,
and
before
come
we
here?
do that, do we want to discuss who our candidates are going to be? It might
it
not
doesn't
be the
make any
travel
difference.
people.
It doesn't make any difference.
All right, I have no problem with that.
We
How
can
would
go-
we, wait a minute, how would we attach this travel possibility for, I think we had 2 or 3 that were out of state.
You don't know
were in
how
our
many
thing.
you're having.
I thought you had
Approximately.
already decided this, and that you decided you would pay expenses for a candidate traveling to interview.
I believe we discussed
We just-
it.
We discussed it, we did
We
not
didn't-
agree.
yeah, we
on
didn't-
it.
Reasonable
No.
expenses.
Right, we need them to
Especially now
present
that
what
I'm
it
being
costs, and
given
then we
2
okay,
candidates
or
that
the
I
town
have
manager.
to have.
And so how is
Yeah,
it,
and they can use the standard Town of Ocean Ridge travel expense report or whatever. I mean, most of what you're gonna have to cover is travel expense and a hotel for somebody who is
Right.
far enough away, they have to be here overnight.
Can I make a suggestion on hotel? If Lynn can call the Sun Deck, right? They might give us a discount rate.
Nope,
They won't?
it would be nice, but yeah, no.
So
So
but there's
I
plenty of options.
I
in the
have a
local
suggestion. First is, I think we did discuss it, I don't think we agreed
area. You're
upon
right,
it.
you're correct.
Number 2 is, I would like to see a stipend, a daily stipend, a stipend across the board, whether you're in town or out of town. I think it levels the playing field. And number 3 is, if somebody does get hired by us and goes to contract, I think we'd be more than willing to return or reimburse them for whatever travel that they took here.
I think you're using stipend in the wrong meaning. You mean expenses.
I'm just saying, I don't care if you're coming from Loxahatchee or Wisconsin, you get $200. You can choose to use it however you want. You can use it in the bar and pay for your own hotel. You can use it for a hotel room. You can do whatever you want. But I
Oh, you're
think
saying
for
flat
me,
rate for everything.
flat rate for everybody.
I would do
Madam Mayor, if I
expenses.
may.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Clement, have we advertised to anyone that we are covering travel expenses?
I don't believe so.
I don't think we
I
do.
think we said relocation fees
Yes, that's
possible.
exactly my point. I'm going for a job interview, and I really want the job, and I've been picked by, I've got 5 candidates. I'm not paying a dime for you to come here. You're coming here on your own dime, and you're rolling the dice. You
So,
know,
and
and that's what's happening. I'm coming to interview for a job, I'm rolling the dice. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. Why is the town of Westford not paying?
It happens. We're not making this stuff
May I
up.
comment?
Yes, please do.
I'm not saying we have to do it.
The best candidates that you have will have choices. They'll have choices to interview elsewhere, to accept a job elsewhere. The farther away someone is, or stated differently, the more you ask someone to incur personal expense to come for the interview, the less likely they will come
The less attractive.
for the interview.
We didn't advertise that we'd be paying for it, so when they.
So
put their-
if they choose not to come for the interview, can we make available a Zoom interview? We've got all this
Sure.
wonderful brand new
Why not?
technology.
Why don't we do a hybrid of your idea? $200 if you live in state, and then X is if you're out of state. I mean, we're talking probably $1,500 total.
You may or may not. I mean, if I was
Yeah.
coming from out of town, I'd want to be here 2 or 3 days and go look at houses and figure
Well,
out.
that's your.
Right, but that would be on
We-
them.
Right.
That would be on them. But there is I don't know what we have here, but there is a typical job interview travel arrangement made. Obviously, nobody's staying at the Ritz. You can stay $169 down at the Colony or the Boynton Holiday Inn, easy peasy with $75 a day, food, whatever. There is a reasonable thing there to do. And if we have a person here that's pretty darn good, I think that this would behoove us to spend some money on them, because don't we want the best clients we can get in here? So
But
I don't think we
I
have to
would
be,
if I were you.
penny wise and pound foolish.
So
Yeah,
why
but I
don't we
mean-
address the travel at the end to see who we have left, to see if they're all within 20 miles?
But I said that in the beginning, and
Yeah, and you
everybody
were
said
right.
no.
Why don't we go through Steve's list and just figure out how many candidates we actually talking about? There might be just one that comes up from out of state.
It should be Kelly's list, Kelly, if you want to use this. It's the same order as Dan had, and I guess what you do is you just call out a name and, we're looking for no's, we're not looking for yeses. We're getting rid of the people that we don't think will make the grade. And then maybe you can mark it.
Okay, so you don't want to do this in writing? You want to
But
just,
she can write it down. The
Oh,
sheet has a
So
spot
wait,
for it.
hold on. Basically, what's being said, I believe here, is we're going to distance ourselves from, just like you did in the original, how you winnowed down, we're going to winnow down out loud ourselves to make sure the no's are no.
Only the no's. If you have a
Right,
question
that's
mark
what
or a
we're
yes,
That's winnowing it down.
right,
We get rid of the
you
people.
just keep your mouth shut.
Basically what you did for us, but I'm getting the feeling that the dice would like to do it again.
Correct.
Although I would encourage you to identify the yeses, not the nos.
I thought about that.
I would think so too.
What I would encourage you to do is each one of you take your pen and write down your first, second, and third choice. And then the mayor should call on each one of you to comment as to who is your first choice. And if there are more than 3 who have that person as a first choice, you've selected a candidate for interview. And then go on to second choice.
Go from the
But
top
you do it on
versus
the
the
basis
bottom.
of who you want, not on who you want to get rid of.
Well, see, I was envisioning we're gonna discuss each candidate, so I was trying to limit the number of candidates we discuss.
Yeah.
That was the point.
but I think we can accomplish what you're seeking by using Dan's methodology versus.
I
But
think
that
we'll end
sounds
up
more
with more.
complicated.
more
Just go
complicated.
yes,
Yeah.
no, and just.
You don't have to say
minutes
yes,
ago.
only no.
It doesn't matter. Yes, no, it doesn't matter. Whatever we say.
What happens here is we're not following the advice we were given, and that's making it a little bit more confusing.
Because we're trying
All
to
right, so-
streamline it.
Well, I don't think it's streamlining.
Yeah.
So Jean, I'm sorry, Jean, would you like to say something? You fall between public comment and advisor here.
On the application, it says we will not seriously consider if you don't complete it out. Mr. Bosser, who is one of the veterans, he missed pages 1 and 2 that had his name and address on it. And he gave me pages 3 through the rest. So just to throw that out, but he did not fill out the application. He filled out only half the application.
So any other applicant that we accept an application from who does not do that is immediately disqualified and is not considered for the position.
Yeah, as long as you treat them all the same.
But
Okay.
you're
Anybody else who didn't fill out the application
the
properly?
one that addresses us, the village of Ocean Ridge, right?
So can we go to the
So
no's?
let's hold on. Let's try not to make this all that confusing.
What about the VA?
So pardon me?
What about the VA?
We're still
thing?
left with
We're still
one.
talking. So if we go with the 5 that you talked about, and then it doesn't mean that we cannot discuss anybody else that's on that list. Otherwise, it makes all your work for naught. So I would like to start with the folks that you suggested to us, and that doesn't throw anybody else out over the bus. We can always bring them up. Because now we're kind of squeezing in with the veterans and who else did we have? We had an extra one there.
And remember, veterans preference only means if they meet all the
All-
requirements that every other applicant met,
Right.
then they get preference over the other applicants. So
Right.
if they don't follow the process, they can be excluded just like every other applicant could be.
Right.
I would like to try to get consensus on doing what Dan suggested, rather than looking at his list, looking at anybody else's list, and let's do the top 3, let's see if we have
Okay.
consensus on
I
that,
can
and
live
if
with
we
that.
don't, then we can do something
Martin, can you
else.
live with that?
It doesn't matter, let's just
Uh,
get it over.
But it would make sense to whittle it down before you do 1, 2, 3,
Why?
because some of your
Why?
3s might be no's.
I don't think so.
Could I just clarify, so Bosert's off the list because he didn't fill out the app?
No, we don't agree to that.
But he said he didn't fill out the application.
I don't care. That just has to be rectified. He should have been told when he sent it in that he'd missed those 2
It's on
pages.
almost every other page of the application. You must fill out to be considered.
But was he called? I mean, we have an incredibly strong candidate.
He can't read, if he can't read,
Right.
if he can't read.
Right.
an
I think that makes him
application
less
process,
How do we
strong.
know it didn't
disqualifies him
happen in
automatically.
transmission? That's
I think that
ridiculous.
makes it less strong. all
That's
right.
ridiculous.
We've talked so much now, I've forgotten the suggestion. Christine?
Why don't we just
Dan
give us our list,
suggested
give
pick,
you a list?
write down the top 3.
My suggestion was that you write down.
Our top 3. In
your
order?
First, second, and third choices, who are not the 2 veterans or Lynn.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe speak.
Kelly, you got some paper you can pass out to everybody, and I think that you should probably do the tally too.
Can we just say it and then we write it down? Right now.
I would be so happy to, you don't even know.
This is the easy part. Wait till you get to deciding who to hire.
Thank you. You got enough?
Thank you. Get you one
Thank
more.
you. Here, I can give Martin that one.
So is it super secret ballot again?
Nope.
No,
Can't be
good try
secret.
though. Okay.
If you're gonna write it down and turn it in, it has to have your name on it.
Yay.
See, nothing secret there. Okay, so,
So we're
All you
doing
need
1,
to do
2,
is hand
3.
me the gun,
Yes.
friend.
gotta find one from the other.
So- This is exclusive of Lynn and exclusive of Tibbs and Bossart.
Correct.
I'm
So
putting
what
in
was the second one?
Buzzard.
Exclusive of who?
I think it's
Lynn and who?
ridiculous that we haven't
And the one who didn't fill
investigated
out
if
his
it was a
paperwork
transmission
properly.
issue.
The one who didn't fill out his paperwork properly, both
I'm gonna
sides.
put his name down.
Right, we
You can put
don't
his-
know
I-
he did that, and the fact that town didn't call him to tell him, or we asked if it was a transmission issue or a scanning issue, is absurd. We take what I think
All
is the
right,
best
settle
candidate
down.
here, and we nix it.
Put it down then.
Ridiculous.
You
I
don't have to
did.
yell at it. Put it
Mayor,
down.
while you guys are doing that, do you mind if you hear some public comment?
Could we please?
Thank you.
Be careful.
No, I didn't want you stepping on my computer.
I'm sorry, Ken Khalil, 86 Island Drive South. I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut, I apologize.
No.
But may I make a suggestion? What I'm hearing, and by the way, Mayor, I listen to the meetings, so just because I may not physically be here, if it's on tape.
I assume you do.
I can hear it. So anyway, besides that, how you're trying to make a decision based upon one interview is crazy. You should be having 2 or 3 interviews with this person. First of all, I would narrow the scope and then have a Zoom interview with a broader category. This is how FP&L does it. This is how major employees in our community do it. They narrow the scope by having Zoom interviews with, in that time, their HR, and they keep narrowing it down to the decision makers, okay? So I would suggest that, and relocate and interview fees, I would not suggest doing. I agree, if you have to pay them to come from Wisconsin, and in order to get them to come, what is the motivation of them wanting this job? I agree with Jeff 100%. If I want a job, I'm gonna do what it takes to get here. I don't have to be paid to get here. Because how hard is it gonna be for me to get down here to move? So I mean, the rationale is kind of crazy here, and with all due respect. So I would broaden the scope, if these are the people you wanna do, I would do by Zoom, and then narrow down to 2 or 3 that you do in person. And then, if you want to have a community meet of 2 people, that's far different than having 5 or 7. It's impossible to do that. That's kind of absurd, in my view. And I think some have recognized that. But I think if you narrow down the scope and do it over 2 or 3 interviews, I think you ultimately make the right decision. And we do trust you in making that decision. We may not always agree, but we trust you to make that decision, and that's why you're sitting up there as a representative government. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, does everybody have their top 3?
I put 4.
Why? Of course you did.
You're such a
I'm gonna
problem.
put a
Don't,
4.
oh, don't.
No, put it
Now
on
you've
mine.
tempted
I
him.
did it because
Nice
Bob.
work.
Here you go, Kelly.
At least you
Put
did
your
it
name on
too.
it, Pew.
I did put in my name right there.
Yeah.
It says mine.
See that?
Last
Slide
year.
hand? What's in those?
It's just her.
Huh?
2. Oh.
Just another useless noise.
WD-40.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
8:15.
Pardon me?
8:15. Dolphin game starts at 8:15.
You have a TiVo, right?
No, I have a remote control. On Apple.
Oh, you haven't gotten there yet,
I'll
huh?
be sitting in front of my TV, 8:15,
You like-
8:16.
You like those commercials, huh?
Have you watched on Amazon?
Amazon.
It's on
Yeah,
goddamn
it's on
Amazon.
Amazon.
And my TV has
Amazon
issues.
Prime, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't stop it, pause it. And then when you hit it back, it jumps to the new action. Got all kinds of issues watching on Amazon.
My problem with that is that the Dolphins always lose.
Are you
No,
kidding me?
Whenever I watch
they're
it.
3-0. Oh,
Well,
Well, don't watch it because we don't want to
See,
lose.
that's why I don't watch it.
Okay?
Not a Florida boy.
Got some decisions for us, Madam Mayor?
Kelly, are we ready?
I hope I did it the way you guys wanted to. I've got Crow, 5 votes for Crow. February, I've got 4.
Who is that?
February,
Ryan
Fabry?
Fabry, he's the
Fabry.
one from
sorry.
South Carolina.
And
I'm
then,
sorry, how many do we have for Ryan? 3?
4.
4.
Okay.
And then I've got a 3-way tie for Bossert, Tibbs, and Berger.
Butcher, what was the other one? Chips?
Tibbs, Berger, and then 1 vote, I'm sorry. I lied, go back.
Okay,
Rewind.
Okay, rewind, go ahead.
Crowell at 5, February at 4, and Berger at 3.
Okay,
Both are at 3?
yes.
But wait a minute, don't we have to do tips?
Yeah, we have to Tibbs, right?
Yeah.
You have to do TIF.
Yeah, that's why
If we
we,
pick,
that's why we didn't
But we
have
have
to
to
put them in there.
anyway.
We already know that.
Correct. So
So
how many
it's
votes were for Bossert and how many votes were for Tibbs?
Each had 2.
Right, so the
How
top
many-
So
three
those
are.
must have been the naughty people who voted for 4, not 3.
Mhm.
That's easy
So
to
we
figure
have
out.
Kroll, we have Fabry, and we have Berger as our top 3.
How many burgers get? 3?
3.
So you got the top 5. Do we need to hash out anything else?
Were
I mean,
there,
it's
this,
it right there, isn't it?
right, this takes care of the no issue. So Kelly,
Right,
there's no other
exactly.
names on any pieces of paper over there?
If you wrote another name down, just say it.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I wrote
So-
down Hawthorne,
so
but that was
this-
my fourth choice, so.
If we want to
I'm not
leave it,
bossy, I'm
if
the
we
boss.
want to leave it at
Start with
5.
that.
I'm
Okay.
sorry,
Oh
Hawthorne
my God.
got 1.
But that was the fourth,
One.
so.
Okay, so as I was saying, if we want to leave it at the 5 because we need to include our vet, which we didn't count here, that's 3, that's 4,
And Lynn Lander's 5, right?
and Lynn is 5. There you go. Okay.
Let me
Whoa,
I
clarify.
think, I think
Please.
the only question is, would you consider adding, Bosworth?
Positive.
We are.
No,
No, we weren't.
All right,
we
let
need
me,
to fight for this.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Okay, yes,
There's
please.
three votes
He
for
has
Hold
Bosworth.
on.
claimed
No,
veterans
2,
preference.
2.
She said 3.
Come on,
She went back.
Okay,
and
wait,
she
hold
tried
on.
to
Excuse me,
explain.
Daniel. Christie would like to say something?
Okay.
Hold
So
on, Jeff,
I went back and looked at the application,
please.
and Jean is correct, that there's a provision that says that the application is not fully completed, we won't even review it. However,
We reviewed.
there's another portion of the application that says we will contact you if any portion is not completed within 5 days. Was that done? Okay,
Okay.
so I think we need to then consider Bossert as an applicant, and since he has a veteran's preference, just like Mr. Tibbs has a veteran preference, by Florida law, we have to
include
interview them
Perfect.
because they are
I would
qualified.
suggest you have 6 candidates.
I was just going to
Yeah,
say, that
so
seems to make the
5
most,
plus Lynn.
that seems to make the most sense as we
Good.
include the 3 we just discussed, the 2 veterans, and Lynn.
Gene should contact Bosworth and ask him to complete the rest of the application. And he will then be considered as a candidate who is on your list because he has veterans preference.
To be interviewed.
Anyway,
To
To be
interviewed.
interviewed, yes, that's exactly
to
what he
be
said.
interviewed.
That makes the 6.
So the decision is, do we interview all 6 via Zoom first and narrow it down to 2 or 3? Or do we,
I don't feel the need to Zoom with Lynn.
no, she can be here. I'm sorry, my humor's gone.
5,
So that's one question, this back ends it, is if we're not gonna narrow down the field, we now have 1, 2, at least 2 candidates that are from out of town, correct?
correct.
Was it Krause, St. Joe?
And Ryan, I believe, right?
Ryan's from South Carolina,
He can drive that.
Rawwell is from Missouri.
No, but then you have Boston. Unlimited reimbursement, and again, not staying in
Yeah.
the Ritz, but I mean, do you want to say it's,
Do we want to give a daily stipend to include all?
Well, could we, why don't we just handle it case by case? Make the phone call, say you're invited, and see what they bring up, and then the town manager.
I don't think
You have to have a parameter there. You gotta have a parameter there, such as approximately what it's going to be, how long it's gonna be.
Well, I like the idea of the Zoom meeting first with all 6 of them. I mean, can we do it inside here and get a
5.
camera and put up, you know, we can look at the TV there, they can see us, we can ask questions too that way. Doesn't cost us anything.
Would the Zoom meeting be to limit the line even more, or just to have a first?
On the nosy. It's to limit the line even more. I mean, now we had a Zoom meeting, then we can go after we have a Zoom meeting with all of the candidates, we can say, all right, that guy's way off the list. You know, just that person's boom, 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 then we now have narrowed it down to 3 or 2. I mean, heck, all 5 of us voted for one candidate right off the bat. That's pretty telling right there.
Till we meet them.
so let's just hire somebody. Let's be done, right?
So, Mr. Advisor, what do you think about an initial Zoom meeting with our 6 to see if it could be narrowed down to the live interview.
In the business of hiring a city manager or a county manager, it would be unusual to do
Right.
that. Doesn't mean you can't
Doesn't
do
mean
it.
you can't.
You obviously would learn something through the process of doing that. My personal belief is you can probably learn what you need to know by
In
the
the 1 year.
combination of studying resume, application, having your staff do background checks, and then conducting a personal interview. It's a short enough list, only 6, that at the end of that process, I suspect each one of you will know very clearly who you would like the best and who you might like second best.
Okay, I tend to agree. If we had a list of 20, it'd be one thing, then we need to winnow down a lot. But I think with 6 personally, I'm just speaking for myself, personally, I think it's doable with the 6 with a real interview. That's just me.
With a
So
real-
a real interview, not the Zoom.
I think in the public sector, while there may be a lot of Zoom interviews in the private sector, in the public sector, you're hiring someone who in many ways is a public face for the government. And rather than eliminating candidates through a Zoom process which really would not include the public,
Correct.
I think you make it less an open process.
I completely disagree with that. I mean, completely disagree with that. The public can sit here and be in on a Zoom meeting. You know from a Zoom meeting what you would know if the man is sitting or a woman or whomever is sitting right there in that chair. You're actually being able to go through the candidate and ask him questions just to see what if he's sitting there. It may be new. It's new to me because I'm still a little problem doing Zoom meetings. But when I do them, I find that they're very, very detailed and informative. I think that we would actually not only save money for the candidate, you're saving money for the town, and then you're determining whether or not that person should even come to the town.
So
Right,
I would agree with the Zoom with the caveat that we might not eliminate anybody.
May not. But that gives you, but the Zoom, at least having it in a Zoom setting, or a setting where the candidate doesn't have to be sitting here and then travel all that way, it gives you the opportunity to ask the questions, and you're looking at the person, you're looking at their body language, you're looking at their face, that's the whole point of an interview anyway. You're really trying to see if it's a hard question, how the reaction would be.
But it's also apples to oranges with hiring a town manager and a county manager versus an employee for a regular business. So I'm leaning with your direction, so we know where you stand.
Mhm.
Martin?
The courts have taken over Zoom for the last 2 years. It works fantastic. I wholeheartedly agree. If we have 6 candidates and 3 of them, from what it looks like, at least are from out of town, I would like to, before we expend any money from the town, either we're saying we're not gonna expend any money out of the town, otherwise give them the opportunity to do a Zoom meeting and give us the opportunity not to have to pay for it.
Okay, so you'd like
Candidate
a
that-
primary Zoom meeting, a first step Zoom
I would
meeting.
do a first step Zoom meeting. It can be a 20 minutes, just get to know, a couple of questions.
Well, then hold on, Diane, I know, I see you waving over there.
Yeah.
But, Christie?
Yeah, what I want to do is I want to ask a couple questions.
Please.
Because what I'm a little concerned about the Zoom meeting is how we accommodate the public. If we conduct a Zoom meeting in here, can the public have the option of attending on Zoom in their house? Or would the public need to physically be here?
I would understand the public would need to be present, just like we've done
Exactly right.
consistently with
Correct.
publishing the meetings. They
Mhm.
will be published online as well, but the actual participation has to be done in the chambers, if that's.
Right, we've got the
agree with
screens, we don't have a problem with that.
Including the commission. We need to
Okay.
be present here.
Well, obviously, yes.
So are we using Zoom purely for audio, or is there also a video component of it?
Video. You
Yeah,
wanted to have
do we
those.
have that capability?
Yeah.
Do we have the capability of folks being able to see the entire commission on Zoom? Or are we only talking about that we'll be able to see the candidate?
The understanding that I got was that you want to install a camera here that captures the dais so that they can see you and you can also see them.
Yeah, it's nothing.
That's easy.
Okay.
But will it be
That's
projected? Chief, will it be
Best Buy's
projected
got
up here
We have trials right
Yes.
now.
so the public can see it?
I'm just making sure that.
Right, you just have to make sure we
From a
all,
sunshine law
right.
perspective, that the public has, access to it, will be able to see the commission and will be able to see the candidate. That's all I just want to make sure.
Okay.
So
No, no.
From a legal standpoint, you can absolutely do it that
Okay,
way.
to clarify that. All right, so Steve,
I'm
priority
gonna do a
meeting Zoom?
total 180 on this, the more I think about this. So we got 5 candidates, we're gonna go Zoom, and there's good Zoom and bad Zoom.
Six
Okay.
candidates.
6.
Let's see it, we don't have to Zoom.
No, I
So-
think you should Zoom her.
That's nuts.
No, I think apples to apples.
All right,
yeah.
whatever.
Exactly.
Anyway,
Six.
if we're going to use this Zoom, I agree with Dan in one thing, I feel a little uncomfortable nixing someone over a Zoom.
Right.
And I think, and I know Ken and
That's
Jeff
Not all
for
the
the
time.
mayors and chief, and
Doesn't
et
make it
cetera, et
right.
cetera. But I think we're sitting here looking at spending $2,000 to $3,000 to get these people down here. And the amount of money we spent this year on stuff, I think we should give these candidates, there's only 3 coming from out of town.
Correct.
Give them a round trip flight and 1 night. And if they choose to extend, that's their business.
In a car.
Okay, so let me
And a
ask you
car,
questions.
and
Madam
meals.
Mayor,
Some might be driving.
may I
First,
ask-
we have to find out.
I'd like to ask Steve a question. So we're only doing 1 interview then?
No.
No, we're
Hold
sticking
on.
to the schedule, the 12.
I understand. My point is though,
Yes,
is that
instead
if
of
you're
this-
doing more
You
than
can
one,
you can do more than 1 interviews.
that's
I
my
don't care.
point.
Happy
So
in
if you did a Zoom interview, then you're going to be more,
Familiar.
have it.
Okay.
So you have a guy, somebody come all the way here, you do an interview, then you want to do a second interview, he comes back again, you're constantly paying. So that's what I'm saying.
I don't have a problem with that. I'm just saying that we're not gonna be able, in my opinion, to eliminate somebody from Zoom.
So you're saying
Unless
You
have,
don't
they
know
go
that.
crazy.
so Steve, can I, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You
My
have no idea.
question would be to Steve, so you're saying that you would be in favor of having a priority Zoom meeting,
Sure.
but not to nix anybody, just to have
Unless
a,
it's blatant.
yes, unless he
What's
comes
opposed?
up there naked dancing. Okay, so
Well, wait a
basically,
minute.
you might hire him. But the bottom line being is that not for the reason of winnowing it, mostly just for a first step introduction, and then the second one would be here.
Which goes to Jeff's point, because now we'll have more interview opportunities.
Well, that actually goes to Christine's point, who said doing it all in one day, so this would be a 2-stepper. What do you say?
I'm fully in support of Zoom. I think that the world has progressed in the last 2 years. And if you can't figure out how not to look like a goof on Zoom or have your,
Right.
uncle walking behind you in your tidy whities, then you probably don't need to be our town manager anyways, because we are moving to much more digital. We're changing our software. We're doing a whole bunch of things to bring ourselves. The only caveat that I would give to that is I'm not in favor of doing a Zoom if we're not delineating and narrowing down the field. If we're not, then it's a waste of time and effort, and you might as well just do 1 interview, 1 time, all 6 of them.
I agree with that completely, because I think what happens is after all the Zoom things are done, all the interviews are done, we should have a vote among ourselves on who we're keeping and who we're not. And that's it.
Narrow it down
And
to
if you
3.
like, well, somebody, we don't cancel somebody on Zoom, put it this way, 4 of us or 3 of us decide that, you know what, that's just not my guy or my
Yeah.
girl, then that's it. That's the whole point of having us votes. I think it should be a consensus of who we keep and who we don't keep.
So he's looking to do the opposite of what you were thinking. So,
I'm-
No, not the
No,
opposite.
no,
No.
well, you don't want to winnow it down.
Unless it's blatant, and I
Right.
think really everyone agrees.
You
And
have to whittle it
And
down.
obviously, everybody's liking the Zoom for a first step. So if we did a first step Zoom, we can always have the discussion afterwards. And what if we don't want to
No,
You
no,
did, Dave.
I don't agree to the Zoom unless you're saying you're whittling it down. It
You
makes
have to
no
whittle
sense.
it down. You get to the crucible,
That's the
who
whole
you want.
purpose.
Whether you're going down to 3, whether you're going down to 4, whether you're going down to your top 2, you pick the number, but I mean, it's,
Boy,
You
that's
gotta vote on
that's
each
a cold,
one
hard
after
way
the
to pick
Zoom
somebody out.
interviews.
It's not.
No, I get
This
it. I've been doing Zoom too, and I know that everybody has done, they're also going back into in-person interviews.
But that's how they interview.
Not everybody.
My son has been interviewing by Zoom for 3 years.
Yes,
That's
yes,
See
just
that?
how
For
they
3
do
years.
it.
He doesn't have a job yet.
He does have a job. He interviews
Steve,
other
don't be
people.
Well, you narrow down and then you.
No, we understand the concept. We do
That's
get
it.
what you're saying. It's just not everybody agrees with it. We do get it.
So we narrow it down.
let's go back
we bring in
to,
the live people after.
are you okay, Martin, with zooming and narrowing it down?
Zooming and narrowing it down.
Steve,
I'll agree to Zoom.
right, just so we can get a
I
consensus.
think we're all, I'm agreeing.
There we
So,
go.
here we go.
And when would you like to do this?
Right. So, if our,
September 12th?
Yeah, oh, might as well keep the same date we had. for the
September,
thing.
October.
October.
and then when will we have the in-person?
Later.
Okay.
So why, I guess my question is, why do we need to wait 12 days to do the Zoom? I mean,
Well, what we built into the process was a period of time after tonight and before your interview to do background check.
Right.
gotcha. Okay. And the town is responsible for the
And
background
that
checks?
town is responsible for that. We do not do that.
Can the,
The HR director or the town attorney or somebody has to take the lead on that.
okay.
Chief of
Can we
Police.
also agree
Yes.
tonight that if you are whittled down, we're gonna be paying for your travel expenses, just so these candidates know that if they get,
I'll say yes to that, but I don't think anybody else will.
I will.
yeah, I mean, I'll
Why don't
pay
we
for
see-
3, I'm not gonna pay for 6.
Why don't we do this?
Well, we're whittling it
Who
down.
we get, maybe the people we get are not gonna be coming from out of town.
Okay.
You know,
But I believe you
problem
can't
guy,
expect
we
people
don't
to come in here, especially, we're hiring somebody hopefully for a decent amount of time. We want somebody really, really good, not get out the cheap way. So we can do this and not stay at the Ritz. Okay,
So when would be round 2 for?
I'll take 3 years.
Yeah, when would be round 2 for whittling it down for the final decision?
You could do the Zoom meeting before October 12th
Okay.
and then keep the rest of the schedule. If you did the Zoom meetings, I don't know what day of the week these are, but
But
Well, the
how
first
long-
is Monday,
How long does it take to do the background check?
first is Saturday, Sunday, third is Monday.
It depends on what you want done. If you want a background check done that we do on every other employee, it's
Yeah.
not gonna be done in 10 days, especially when you're asking us to do 5 of them in that 10-day period of time.
Is there an abbreviated one that gives us at
If
least
you
enough?
simply want to know whether or not they meet the minimum requirements to enter the building, which is the CGIS requirements, then
Oh,
that
I
is a
made
very
that.
simple process.
But don't we want some verification on credentials, like they actually did go to the school, they actually?
Yes.
Yeah, that's gonna
Yeah.
take time.
Yeah, we want the
If
full
you're-
thing.
But if you're expecting that, that's not
That's-
going to happen in 10 days.
But
Correct.
you can do that, if you have your top 2 candidates, you can do it on the top 2 candidates. You don't have to do it on 6 candidates.
Well, the point being that if the Zoom meeting, we're whittling it down, say we whittle it down to 4, from 6 to 4.
And one's really an axe murder.
No, those are the other 2. So,
Oh.
yeah. So with the 4 that we would whittle it down to, they would need full out. Because why go through that and have them come for an in-person interview? If we-
Well, you can still do that, and then you decide you want to make an offer on John Doe.
It's
Then
contingent.
it's contingent
Yeah.
upon.
I would
this
So-
suggest that you simply verify that each one of them can meet the minimum standards.
All right.
first,
Okay,
And you interview those that can meet the minimum standard.
all right.
From
Off
there,
the
if
6.
you pick the top 2, so you have one that you're going to potentially go with
And a
as your
backup.
primary and a backup.
Okay,
Then we do the backgrounds on those 2, being priority on number 1. And if something happens in the background process, then you already have a second candidate.
And what's the timing on that?
Typically, it takes a couple weeks because there are processes that require mailings and/or emails and responses.
Just to do the initial check?
No, the
No.
initial check can be
The
done
full
in
check.
several hours.
So that gets to Dan's date question.
So nobody's starting on
Yeah,
November
you
1st.
can't, yeah.
Potentially they could, if the first candidate that you pick goes through the background process very simply and very easily, yes. But if we start running into hurdles with number one, and now we have to go to the alternate of number two, it's going to run into a timeline issue, yes.
Could we do number one and number two simultaneously?
We can,
Is there an expense associated with it?
just man hours and obviously any expenses that we have in getting data. We use some private vendors to pull specific information about people. Those are expenses, but they're minute expenses.
Yeah. Nothing to kill us here. So more or less, our big thing here is how we do our calendar. So if the 11th would be out for the full day, could
No,
we do?
12.
the-
12.
Oh, that's right, 12. I got it here. So if the 12th is out for the full day, could we do 12 for Zoom and just a couple days later or the beginning of the next week, do the in-person?
Well, we have 6 people, so you want to start a little earlier?
For the Zoom, well, it was going to go all day on the 12th anyway, from
That's what I'm
9.
saying. I'm gonna
Yeah, so
start
let's
at
start, yeah. We could do that. What do you think, Daniel? We could do that with our, how many did we end up with? 6?
6.
6 Zooms throughout the day. And then the
On
beginning,
which date?
on the
The
12th,
12th.
like we
Okay.
originally talked about. And then the beginning of, anybody got a calendar out, the beginning of the following week? What are we looking at?
17th is Monday, 18th Tuesday, and so on.
So we could do, how about the 17th on Monday for the in-person?
Well, that's saying that he's gonna have, the chief's gonna have the 2 weeks to get all the background checks done.
I thought we were going to do our background check until
Until
we
the
come
end.
Well,
to
no, he's gonna
the, for this
he's
first
gonna get the in the door background check before we do the Zoom.
Zoom, correct.
Okay, and we do the Zoom, we whittle it down. It's still gonna take him 2 weeks to get the people
But
that we whittled
I
down.
thought we talked about doing the thing, picking the 2 best, the top one and the second one, and then he can do the background check.
I think I would do if we
So you'd like
go
to
through the
spend 2
Zoom-
weeks in between to do that.
Exactly, because then you're really incurring.
Well, you're ready to
expenses.
go.
They're incurring expenses, we're incurring expenses.
So then that would be, Steve, you got yours? So if we did the 12th for the Zoom and then approximately 2 weeks for the full on?
Yes, and that, obviously, that is if we don't run into any issues with.
Come on, chief, you can do it 2 weeks.
Oh, I
So
can
2
do it
weeks
every
is the
day,
26th.
But the reality is that you want the same process that you do with every other
Right.
employee.
This is
to be
important.
done on this employee. You don't wanna
No.
waiver your process because then we're gonna run into legal issues.
Yeah, no, we want to do it right. So approximately what date would be the soonest you think that we could look at?
I would say that if you're looking at
First week of
doing
November.
October,
That's what I'm thinking.
well,
That's what I'm thinking. What do you think?
we're probably looking at no earlier than the 27th.
How about we go for the 1st of November?
Why push it?
Why?
Sounded like.
Well, we
a
got a
good
town
start.
meeting, don't we?
Oh, that's right.
The set- not-
Sounded so good.
Town meeting is the following week.
7th.
Oh, that's right. The town meeting's the following week.
So can you get it done on the 27th, or are we pushing it too much there?
No, I think if we're just doing 2 applicants, we can do some prep work on all of them to get us a little ahead, so that when you guys make a decision, we already have some information on.
So by the 12th, you're doing the prep work, and then after that, we say we'd
We're
like
gonna
this.
give you the go-ahead on the 12th for all 5 or 6 candidates,
Correct.
as long as they all pass. We already know Lynn has passed.
Yes.
Okay.
Then, if the rest of them pass, then you interview all of them. If they don't, there's no reason to even interview them on that day.
Are we talking about reference checking or
No.
background?
We're talking about a CJIS compliant background check. For the purposes of them being allowed to legally work inside of our building, since it is also a police department.
That's the first one.
That's the first, that's our first one.
The second one's
Makes no
gonna make
difference.
sure they
If they
got.
don't pass that one, it doesn't matter what
They
we
can't
think
be
of them. They can
Yeah.
be the greatest candidate. If they don't pass that, they're out anyway.
So we'll know before we do the Zoom meetings. Correct,
But
so
what Jeff just asked you is if that's part of the first wave.
that's
the first wave.
exactly
All of
right,
them
that's
will
the
get
first
that.
wave.
And then
Maybe we
after
already
that,
did.
when you narrow it down, we will just do the extensive reference check and those kind of things moving beyond that.
Okay,
On
so
those
we'll
2
be looking at possibly.
So on the 12th, we're going to give you 3 names. We're narrowing it down from 6 to 3.
The 12th, we're having our Zoom interview.
Yeah.
And then we will have.
After the 12th.
After the 12th.
We'll make
I
a
mean,
note that-
we're going to
We
make
might
the
take a
decision
vote.
on the 12th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We might have one. We might have
Or
4.
you might have, yeah, who
Yeah,
knows?
I don't wanna limit it.
Right.
I would like to get down to, the
Your
goal
goal
for
would be
me would
less
be
than
to
6.
narrow it down
Yeah,
to
the goal
3.
would be less than 6,
The
but you
goal would
don't,
be less than 6.
but you want to get the best candidate, so having a goal to zip people out, I don't think
Just
is a
know
great
that
direction.
if you pick 6 to proceed, the backgrounds won't be ready by the 27th.
Right.
No,
Wait, so
no,
why
no.
don't we just
Yeah, I don't
wait?
think that'll
Can we,
happen.
can we do this? Can we wait until after the 12th meeting and say, okay, at this point, this is how many people we have.
Well, that's what we
Chief
did.
is
Let's
gonna
just
take
have
X
some
amount.
tentative dates, because if it's not on anybody's calendar, I mean, it's like herding cats. It's
Right.
not fair.
So we
12th
have the
and
12th for
27th.
our Zoom.
Yeah.
And after the 27th, because
So
he's giving us an
tentatively the
approx,
27th,
we'll
that's
know a
what I'm
little closer to time. So after, I was going for the 1st, they're not going for it. So the
Who, what?
last week of November,
27th.
October.
In October.
October, last week of October.
Thursday.
Last week of
Thursday.
October. Last week of October.
The only,
Right,
if
Thursday.
I may caution here.
Caution
the further
away.
we push this further out and out,
Mhm.
I think we're gonna have candidates dropping off
Correct.
that list.
Mm-hmm.
They came to us with an application over the last 3 weeks in August, as
Wow.
early as
Yeah, they're
August.
obviously in the market.
Yes.
Right,
So we should definitely call them within the next 24 hours and tell them they've made the cut, right?
that, yes, but,
Who does
Is
that,
there-
Jeannie?
I mean,
Well, we have to decide. We'll finish.
would there be any possibility that we can do the Zoom before the 12th and then leave the 12th as they have been notified about the 12th, right? That's part of the pack? Who put it back?
Right, Daniel,
The
have we?
timeline is on the website.
It's on the website, okay, so
Yes.
they know about the 12th, that they potentially have to come here. They probably have that in their calendar somewhat tentatively. I would, if it is okay with the rest of the commission here, and if it works with advertising the Zoom meeting on legal, I would try to pick a date in the next few days, try to get them on Zoom and try to knock this thing out and then invite them over on the 12th. We're wasting
But
time.
no, he can't get the full.
I can
We
do
don't
it
need to
from
do the
No, he's
full,
gonna do
we
the
do
half one.
the quick
Before
one.
you interview
Oh
them,
my
whether you
God.
do it on the 5th or the 12th.
Herding cats.
And
6
again,
candidates,
it is a hire with a contingency. That happens all the
Obvious.
time.
So,
Well, your turn is next week, so you're,
Yeah, it's not that, it's really not that far away, the 12th, it's next week.
can we figure out a date amongst us where we can be available?
you know how, what that's like?
That's
I don't
what I'm
know.
saying.
That's why I say, I think it all sounds
I can
good.
tell you how it's for me.
I know, we're all not just, hanging out on our motorcycles.
Yeah.
But I
Being
like,
early.
I like your thought that
Moving it
they
earlier.
already know, they've already got the 12th semi-reserved if they are going to be a candidate. So I'd like to keep that either for the Zoom or for the in-person. I prefer it be the in-person because these people have been, hanging out since August and possibly it's not gonna work any further for them, so.
Would
So,
you
what
consider
are
a
you saying?
Zoom meeting on October 5, 6, or 7?
Yes.
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 Just a heads up,
Yeah.
the 5th is a Jewish holiday. I don't know if that would come in.
That's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, forget
Yom
Friday.
Kippur.
So let's do the 6th,
Good point.
October
6th, I have a
6th.
doctor, but I'll cancel.
Good.
I'd rather do the 10th, just next week is hell.
Well, the 10th doesn't give us
Well,
enough time to
Yeah,
do
that's
in-persons
not
on the
enough time.
12th.
It needs to
Is
be
a
the next
holiday
few
as
days.
well.
Pardon me?
The 10th is Columbus Day.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So can you move things around,
5.
Susan, and do this 5 or 6?
I don't know.
I know I
can
can't do
try.
the 6th. I know I can't do Friday the 7th, so it would only be Wednesday.
Let's stick,
But I'd have to look and see what I got on.
why don't we stick with the 12th and make the next one the 19th, the week after? Stick with the 12th for the Zoom and make the in-person the 19th. That's the next week.
Because you don't want to do the in-person until the chief has gotten the
No, I don't.
background check.
If he does the basic background
Yeah,
check,
we're just
we
gonna do
know that they qualify to walk
Right.
into the building.
That's,
Everything else is on contingency. If they,
Until we decide on the last two. And then we do that after the 19th.
so you pick a guy and you do a background check and you find he's, sociopath.
That's why we got a backup.
Then
That's
we
why we got
go
the
to-
Start
backup.
all over again?
Then we have candidate number 2.
That's why we have a
Candidate
backup.
number 2 doesn't qualify, we go to candidate number 3.
Yeah, instead of shoving it, I think the 12th and then we try for the 19th.
19th?
That's the following week.
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Pardon me?
It's a Wednesday.
Right, so is the
Bring them
12th.
in as quick as
Sure, then
possible.
it'll be-
Right?
Zoom them in.
I am pretty sure I will not be here on the 19th because I think I'll be in Tahiti.
Oh,
good for
can
you.
I come?
Sorry.
I'm booking my Tahiti
We should
stuff
do
right
it
now.
on Teams.
I'm going to Tahiti with Dan. He's gone on cool vacations. You realize that?
But you don't need me. I mean, I can be helpful, but
Yeah,
I think you know the process.
right.
I think once we've narrowed it down, hopefully narrowed it down.
Yeah, and you're
A much
always
more
available.
steady-
So what are we doing here, guys? We doing
So
the
we're-
5th or the 12th?
The 12th and the
For the
19th.
I'm going for the 12th and 19th. That
For the
suits
12th and the
mine.
19th, that's what we're doing.
That gives us some time. 12th and 19th.
And what time on the 12th? We now moved it to 10.
10 o'clock.
All right, let me change
Right,
that.
because we have,
Can we plan on bringing lunch in? We all have lunch together and then just keep on going? No hot dogs. It's still speaking to me.
What is it?
I didn't force you.
You did that.
I did.
Yeah,
What
you're
time
right.
on the 12th?
the 10th,
10. Why can't I add this?
10 to 12 and then
How long do you anticipate each Zoom meeting to be?
Hour?
we do the 50 minutes,
Right.
And then you-
45 minutes.
Then you have a
Well, this is not gonna be up to
50 minutes for 5
Yeah, it's
people
gonna be
is not a
seven-
lot.
10
8
to
hours.
12 and
Yeah.
1 to 5.
We start
Hmm?
at 10.
10 to 12 and then 1 to 5.
yes, 10 o'clock because we have less candidates,
I did.
right? Or
We
we know,
six.
we ended up with 6 anyway.
We're 6.
Oh,
We have
we're-
6.
because we're not doing the
Reception.
reception. I knew there was something, on-
Except,
and the 19th will be in person.
maybe now you can change.
This is probably will change because some other candidates may not do it. So, time might be.
You want to do 3 in the morning, then break for lunch, and then 3 in the afternoon, and then have your selection meeting?
What?
Zoom
On the 12th, no.
on the 12th.
You want to just use the
What?
schedule that you already had?
12 to 1, 1 to 2.
10 to
No,
12, lunch for an hour and then 1 to 5.
Fine.
She's suggesting breaking it up so that it's even for you. So if you do 12 to 1, then have lunch from 1
Can
to
we
2.
just-
And then you
10
have
to
2
12
5.
and 1, that works for
Then you
me.
have 3 hours of break, 3 hours of break.
No. Let's
No,
get
I'm
it done.
not-
No.
Why don't we
Okay,
do
so-
the 10? Why don't we
10
do
to
it at
12,
the
so
9?
that's
Because
2
that was
interviews.
Jeffrey's suggestion,
I'll
so
do it
I
at
was
7
just
o'clock.
listening to you. All
And
right,
then
people.
we have an
Let's not
hour
make
for
this one
lunch and then
crazy.
we've got 4 more, so 1 to 5.
I
So,
mean, you could do it at 9, I don't care.
All
I
right,
do.
so,
You do?
Yeah,
What do you got going? 9
everything.
o'clock's early. Not that
So-
early.
all right, so,
The
That's
Zoom
okay.
times would be 10, 11, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
right, and then, how's that sound, Christie? 10, 11, 2 in the morning, the rest in the afternoon, break for lunch, and then we meet.
You know, you said 3 in the morning. I thought, why 3 a.m.? I thought, is she
Yeah.
out of her
You did say
rocker?
No.
Oh, now I understand.
Yes, 3 in the AM. And then we would have, what time would
Did
we
you
have
see
our
the look
meeting
on my
afterwards? Hey, I was just going with it. You say 3 AM, I'm here. So we
Not
would
me.
then meet after the Zoom, right? We're here, and that's when we make our decision. Do we keep them? Do we ditch some?
So there
Where
will
we
be a
going?
little bit further time. It will probably be till about 6.
But maybe less,
Yeah.
because you may end up having some of the Zoom interviews go for 30 minutes.
Well, as Dan pointed out, we might lose some of these candidates.
Right.
That's the other thing. Some people may not even do
50
it.
minutes is a long Zoom interview.
It really is.
That's a long interview.
So that,
That's 52.
It really is. My question is, if we have our little meeting afterwards to have our discussion,
And do
that would be a
3-minute
public,
interviews. Jeez.
so we have to advertise and have all that. So that's why we have to come up with
All
this.
public.
Exactly. So we have to come up with the exact times so that we can let everybody know.
So Dan, do you think that the 30-minute interview is better than the hour?
45.
45.
45? We'll do 45.
Everybody good with 45?
Sure.
and that gives you 15 minutes to do business in
Martin?
between each one.
You good with 45?
That's good, yeah.
Okay, so let's go
I can sell a
45.
motorcycle in 15 minutes.
We'll do 45.
First 5 minutes.
3 AM, 3 in the AM. 3 in the AM,
45 minutes apart, starting at 10.
correct.
So they'd be 50 minutes apart with a 5-minute break between them.
No, I think they're still saying an hour
Yeah.
apart, but 45 minutes with 15
Minute break.
minutes
Yeah,
for
15-minute break.
whatever they need to do, answer phone calls, emails,
Yes.
handle bits.
So it's an,
Okay, keep them an hour.
right, hour block, but we're actually only 45 using it for the interview. 3 in
And
the
then
morning,
at 6 o'clock, regular
6
council
o'clock,
meeting
regular.
to decide.
special meeting, 6 o'clock, special meeting, right,
So
everybody?
narrow it down.
When's this?
Same day,
At
hon.
6
Hey.
o'clock
We have to
that
make our
evening
decision.
to
What's
make
this?
it-
Oh,
to narrow down.
Yes, where we decide.
okay.
Yep. All right, everybody good?
So 10 to 7, we're
No,
basically back to the
So
same.
are we taking an hour break at the end?
Yeah, you can have
Yeah.
an hour.
Or do you want to do it at 5:30
Okay.
rather than wait till 6 o'clock?
Yeah.
Well, we'll do it whenever we're finished, yeah.
Well, no,
Well,
you have
but
to
you have to-
advertise.
you have to
Has to be
advertise.
advertised as
You can't
Why
public.
don't
say
you just
whenever
vote
we're
after the
finished.
last interview?
Right, because we're only narrowing it down to the in-person people.
Correct.
So I don't have a problem.
Would
whether
that
we
be
find it-
sufficient to,
Just roll it
Yeah,
right
because you
through.
could
because we've already
Just 15
advertised the
minutes,
whole
yeah.
day.
the whole day and then say, after the last Zoom interview,
Brilliant,
They're narrowing down.
council meeting to consider.
yes.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, did you hear that, Jeff?
I would just say 5,
We're just gonna vote when we're
5:15.
finished.
Yeah, they roll
Because
right
it's
after
already-
the
She's
last
gotta
interview.
have a time
No.
certain to put in the
She
ad
doesn't
though.
need a time
No,
certain. She
she
can just
doesn't.
say, you know, if we're starting at 10.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah, the time certain is 10 o'clock.
right, exactly right.
Gotcha. Okay, so we can have it, can we have a time certain on the in-persons at 10 o'clock on the 19th also?
Sure. If I can get my damn calendar.
Okay.
So who's gonna pick who's first, second, third, fourth? Who's gonna pick that?
Alphabetical.
Except if they're on a different time zone, it might be a little easier if they're a little later.
Who's gonna make the call? Is it Jean?
Who makes it,
So she could sort that out, right?
right, however it comes out, Gina, I don't think it's going to be a huge situation.
And we're gonna
Well, if you're the
send- we're
candidate,
gonna
wouldn't you
send
wanna be the
notices
first
to
or do you wanna
those
be
that
the
you're not
last?
interviewing, thank you.
I would not yet,
Exactly.
because you may not like any of the 6 you interview, and candidate name number 7 may be the one you want to hire.
Right,
Don't send them away yet.
yeah, exactly. Bad luck.
I got a couple of them I want to send away.
All right, so 10:19,
We wouldn't even get to candidate number 7 necessarily because we're willing it down from 6. We're not
We're
gonna,
hoping.
we're not on the 19th gonna open the whole can of worms again and invite 3 other people.
no, we're hoping, but I get it, you don't have to say no yet.
If you hate all of the candidates, you might.
True.
So therefore, don't close the door yet. I don't think anybody's gonna be crying.
No.
So the 19th, we'll do the in-person interview, correct?
Mhm.
Which hopefully, I'm thinking 4 maybe, I'm just throwing that out, 4. So what would be a good time to start the 19th in-person interview?
10's fine by me.
Does it have to be the 19th?
That's
What
what we
time?
decided, don't throw out another act here, it'll be another 40 minutes. So,
10 on both days is great.
is 10 good?
Right.
For the 19th for the in-person
Yeah, I
interview?
thought we were, that was already
Come
No,
in
a
at
it's
9?
still going.
done deal.
Yep.
done
What are you
deal.
trying to do? Go to lunch?
No, I have
Okay.
to pick somebody up from the airport.
And then
Tell them to get an
you'll have
Uber.
a contract available
From
for
Miami.
just the
Give me both.
finalists
Right,
on
like-
the 19th.
Huh?
You'll have a
Okay.
contract
Yeah.
available for at least the finalists on the 19th.
I would like to see, yeah, if we wheedle it down, can we have that fill in the blank contract? So everybody knows before they get on a plane to come here, that if there's some things in the contract that they just don't like, then they can
Don't get on that.
self-select not to
There
come.
is a standard contract published by the International City Management Association, which you can purchase. I would encourage the city attorney, town attorney's office to acquire a copy of that contract, modify it as you think appropriate, leave the blanks open for things like start date, salary, and anything else that might be a negotiable item, but use the standard contract, because it will cover the kinds of things that a candidate would be interested in.
Right.
It will cover the things that you'll be interested in, like how easy it is to fire someone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the
So-
basics, how does that sound to you, Christie?
You know, our firm's been doing this for years.
Right.
So we have quite a database of city manager contracts, so we can provide several for you guys to consider. And I can go through it one-on-one with each of you regarding our standard. We can look at, Tracy's past one, we can look at, Lynn's current one, and go over the issues that we typically run into with those types of contracts.
I guess the reason that I was suggesting it is there's one or two candidates who had a desired salary probably above what we would actually be comfortable doing. And I think that they need to know that ahead of time before they get on a plane. If we're not going to pay somebody $160,000 plus relo, I think they need to know that ahead of time. Don't waste.
Well, we had
their
an
time,
advertised amount. We never,
You advertised a salary range,
right? And the top of the
and I
range.
would suggest that you should hire someone somewhere in the salary range.
Does anybody
If somebody
remember what
wants
our
more
range
than the
is?
salary range,
140 maybe was the top, I
you
believe.
should not interview them.
Right.
Well, then,
Did we knock
Or
somebody out?
her.
But it was in
Or
the, but it was in the
No,
advertisement.
but
Why
we
would they
just
put it
chose
there?
5 people. Christine was Crowell at that 160 number?
Yeah, but
no,
just because
Berger was.
because he's asked.
Which guy?
Oh, Crowell said his desired salary was 130. His current is 165.
Right.
So I'm not worried about
So he's
him.
cool.
Michelle Berger was at 160 as desired.
But she
But
knows also.
she didn't take the job in Sewell's Point for that very reason, got into a fight with him over.
It was a little different though,
No.
because they wanted to give her
Health
medical
benefits.
insurance and she didn't want medical insurance, she just wanted the car allowance.
Right, but bottom line is
But
we
then it doesn't-
advertised
Can you
it,
start
we
talking about
advertised,
salaries
yeah,
now?
yeah, we advertised at that amount. Nobody's thinking we're jumping to 160. They can desire all they want. We have
Okay.
not promised anything more. So I don't think that's an issue we have to have that discussion with, right?
Okay.
All right.
The question I would have though, if you have a range, would you decide that you want to offer somebody within that range based upon their experience? Some of your candidates are more experienced than others. So once you do whittle it down to, let's say, your top 2.
Right.
Then you're gonna have to decide how much salary and how much reload.
Right.
If they do
Right.
need.
Once we whittle it down, then that can be dealt
Worry
with
about
when
it.
it happens. Yeah, we worry about that when it comes. But we all know those are points that we have to deal with. So, Mr. Clayman,
It's not anywhere near.
anything else you want to add?
There is only one question. I didn't write down the time your meeting starts on the 19th.
10 o'clock,
10.
please.
And then are we gonna do ideally 2 in-person interviews and then go directly into a decision?
We're expecting, it depends on how the Zoom goes. We might end up with 4 still. You don't know, right? 3 or
But then
4.
once we complete the interviews, we're expecting to go straight into a
Decision.
decision. Okay.
Correct.
So I blocked off 10 to 1, right, for us?
No, you might need to.
You might need
Think
more
it's
than that.
more?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
If we end
I
up
do
with
too.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, I
All
wouldn't be
right.
surprised with 4 candidates. I really wouldn't. I thought we had some nice things there. And then it's going to take the time to make this decision because we've ditched the reception.
Cool.
So you can advertise the meeting will start at 10.
Correct,
And it will end when it's over.
when it ends.
The never ending meeting.
So Madam Mayor, if I may,
Please.
just so we are all on the same
Right.
page, if I can kind of go back through the decisions
Please
we
do.
perhaps have made tonight, and
Mhm.
if there's something that I've missed, just let us know. So we are a consensus that we're canceling receptions.
Correct.
No receptions. We've selected the 6 candidates, and we will conduct a Zoom meeting with all 6 on October 12th, starting at 10 a.m., with the conclusion of that day to be a decision to potentially whittle it down. Then we'll reconvene October 19th at 10 a.m. to interview the finalists and conclude that day with a decision on whom to select, which will be contingent on a full background check.
Right.
In person.
Then after the October 12th Zoom, I'll work with you guys on a sample contract that we can get out to the finalists coming October 19th. So they will have a sample contract and can address any issues or exceptions they take to that contract.
And
think
when
you
are
got
we
it.
going to decide upon reimbursement for travel? After the 12th?
After the Zoom?
After the 12th, when
After
we
the
whittled
Zoom?
it down.
Okay.
Okay.
So the only thing I would say, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, we should call these people tomorrow morning to make sure we don't lose anybody that we're interested I guess
Reach
it's
out.
actually Jean
Any
doing it.
idea which one I should call first? Because the first one I call is gonna have 6 times to pick. By the time we get to the last one, he's got 1 time to pick.
You should do whoever you
What?
have as number one.
Alphabetically or?
Alphabetically. I don't care how you
That's the
say it.
way you've done everything else.
Yeah, because you know what? If they want the position, they're going to come to the interview, they take the interview time.
Okay.
Right, I don't recall ever getting an opportunity to pick my interview time.
Well, Gene can work that out. Somebody
Yeah.
says, look, I absolutely can't be there.
That's what I mean.
Just move it around.
Just leave it on.
Whatever.
All right. So anything else you want to add, Mr. Clayman?
M&M.
I have nothing else, Your Honor.
Thank you so much for
Thanks for
putting
all.
up with
Thank you,
us.
Dan.
Have fun in Tahiti.
When do you
My
go?
pleasure.
You'll be here 12, but not the rest.
Where are you
All right.
gonna go?
So I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion?
So move.
I adjourn the meeting at, what do we have, 12 before 8.
Which part of Tahiti are you
7.
gonna go?
Yeah, 8.
Dan, which part of Tahiti?
We're flying to Papeete,
Papeete.
and then we're taking a 10-day cruise.